So today on the show, I'm really excited about chatting to Sarah Deakin and Ruby Beagan. They're both from Thursday, which is a creative agency, and they're both account directors. And the reason I invited them on is because they're very impressive account directors. I believe that they do a lot of account directorship really, really well. Some of those things that I've seen and watched them do is being really consultative with their clients. I think they show up and they ask the right questions in meetings. They also bring their clients fresh ideas, new thinking, insights and trends, and generally they're adding value to every interaction, and they're very commercially astute. Apart from all of that, they're also very energetic and engaging, and they're part of my sort of inner circle of account directors that I want to be around because I learn a lot from them. And what I've also observed from both of these girls is the fact that they're always open to new ideas. They're humble enough to know they don't know everything. They approach challenges with a real sort of resilience and a thirst for knowledge. So I love being around them, and that's one of the reasons I wanted them to come on, because I'm sure there's a lot of either account managers looking to step up to account director or account directors that are looking for other ideas from other agencies. So I see this interview as a bit of an exchange of information. So I'm going to pass over to, maybe I could start with Sarah, and just tell us a bit about you, Sarah, your role at Thursday, how you got into account management, and kind of what you do on a day-to-day basis.
So I'm an account director at Thursday. So we're about a 20 strong insight-led design studio in Winchester. My previous role was with an agency called Skyline, which was a slightly smaller agency. And we were sort of specialised in really short lead times. We were a very reactive agency, worked incredibly closely with our clients. You know, they pick up the phone to us and we try and turn things around super quickly. So a very relationship focused role at Skyline. And then about a year and a half ago, perhaps 2 years ago, Thursday acquired Skyline, and Thursday are much more kind of insight-led and strategic in their culture. So the merge with Thursday brought about a company which was an agency which was much more kind of sort of a full service agency. And that's where we are now.
Amazing. Thanks, Sarah. What about you, Ruby?
Hello, thank you. I'm Ruby Beagan, and I am one of the, alongside Sarah, one of the account directors at Thursday, which is a design studio based in Winchester. At Thursday, we use design to explore our clients' problems, and we have a real focus on clarity. And it was only this morning, actually, that I had a client say to me, "Oh, it now makes sense." And it's those sort of moments that we're really after. So that's kind of what gets us up in the morning. I started my account management journey 5 years ago, and I think probably with quite a lot of people within client services, I fell into it. It's not really the kind of career that you get told about at school. It's not really kind of on your radar from a young age. You know, it's usually a vet, or in my case, I think I wanted to be a midwife, but my biology teacher told me to take a different route. So that ended that dream. But yeah, so I kind of left uni, panicked, got a call center job because it was kind of like, oh, I'm out of education, straight into job. Didn't want to sort of take that gap year. Did it for 6 months, hated it, and then looked into kind of pursuing career in client services.
Wow, but client services in agencies or client services, it could be anywhere, because presumably in the call center you got used to speaking to people all the time, which is part of our role, isn't it?
Yeah, so from the call center I went to a letting agent, so kind of did all that customer service side of things and management of properties, and then from that was then a leap into agency.
Amazing. Well, thank you both so much. Sarah, can I ask you a question? Recently there's been a lot of debate about what value the role of an account manager or account director actually brings. So would you mind just sharing your view on what you believe account management actually brings to the party, to both agencies and clients?
Yeah, well, I think from a client's point of view, we're acting as that liaison between themselves and the agency. So we've got this really good view of both worlds. So we put ourselves in the world of the client, we learn about what they do, what the industry is doing. And then we know like the back of our hand, how the agency runs and the strategic side of, what value we can deliver. So it's just about kind of maximizing those opportunities, making sure that we're delivering to the best of our ability.
I think you're right. I mean, I've seen particularly you, Sarah, being really, as I said in the intro, very consultative with your clients, really getting under the skin of their businesses, finding about what challenges they have, their pain points, and bringing solutions that don't always necessarily fall in the remit of the services you provide at studio, at Thursday Studio. So I think you're absolutely right. You really sort of play this ambassador role. What about you, Ruby? Is there anything else you can add to that?
Yeah, I totally agree with Sarah. We, client services value added for the agency. We're definitely the hub. We kind of bring everything together. We are the glue. And I am including project management when I sort of mention that. But I do think account management, we have the deepest understanding of our clients' businesses, the ways they like to work, their expectations. We also know the pressures they're under, the stakeholder management, what they need to be able to do their job well. And I think within our agency, we represent our client, and sometimes fiercely. We have resourcing meetings where people are trying to take away our resource, and we protect our clients. We fiercely are like, no, it needs to be done. We're managing expectations. So I think agency side, we're that hub, and then client side, like Sarah said, I think we're an extension of their team. We have that crucial outsider's point of view, but we're also an extra brain or an extra pair of hands for them on their day-to-day stuff. And we don't sort of just say yes to all their requests. We make sure we challenge them with consideration to make sure that all the solutions that we're giving them are meeting their problems and overcoming them hurdles, so that we sort of understand not just the current day problems, but also keeping in mind the bigger picture, like you said.
It's a really, really good point, actually. There was a study done by Gartner last year, and I shared that insight with you, and I thought it was really, really insightful, because the study was among 700 B2B organizations, and they were asking the question about why don't you grow at the company? And they've realized that account management, if they go above and beyond in terms of service, they will only reach a level of retain. They'll retain the account. But in order to go beyond that and actually grow that account, they have to have what they call customer improvement conversations with their clients. And that's where you are being more critical, you are being more challenging, you are delivering more insight and really stretching the client. So I love that you brought that up, Ruby. The other thing that you just said that I would love you to sort of go into a bit more detail about is, in your agency, you separate the PM function, the project management function, from the account management function. Now, I'm with my other clients, they don't make that separation. So if effectively that one person is doing both roles. Can you talk to me a little bit about how that works for you, and also what you believe kind of the fors and againsts?
Definitely. So I've been in an agency that does both. One where it was a dual role and I was account director and PMing, and then in other agencies where the roles are separate. And I think it is separate to an extent. Sarah and I very much still know what's happening in our projects, but splitting it out means that Lucy, our project manager, Lucy, is able to work on the day-to-day stuff. So the timelines, requiring information and content, and kind of all of that information, and making sure that all the cogs are turning correctly. And then it allows Sarah and myself to kind of come in above that. Although we have full knowledge of the day-to-day, we're able to grow that client account. We're able to talk to them strategically, because they don't always want to talk to us about the day-to-day. We're able to kind of pause that and get them to look forward, which is a massive benefit of having that split role. It also means if you're navigating some of the trickier situations and conversations, you're able to say, oh, hang on, let me take that back to my project manager and I can come back to you on that. And it kind of, you don't feel like you're sort of put on the spot, of what date is this going to be delivered, or can we bring this in sooner? Kind of some of those time concerning questions. So I think it does help in having that other person. And then doing a joint role, I've done that as well. And similarly, you just navigate around it. It is just a little bit harder to get the headspace to think strategically and think about the bigger picture, because you are more bogged down in the day-to-day.
That's exactly what I hear a lot. And it's interesting you said earlier on that it kind of separates you from the delivery. So if the project isn't going to time or to budget for whatever reason, does that mean you don't have to have those conversations with the client if something's going, haywire? Who actually does have that conversation? Because, we know there's always challenges, particularly with tight deadlines and things. So what actually happens in in sort of the day-to-day running?
I think in those scenarios, when a project's kind of needing that additional level of support, Sarah and I definitely do get involved, and having that conversation and kind of, but being on the client side, sometimes project managers are more on the agency side on the basis that they're seeing all the numbers and times and are very realistic, whereas account management, you can kind of be like, okay, well, let me see what I can move around and be a little bit more accommodating in some ways to just try and kind of soften that message. So I think we do definitely come in and help with the more difficult conversations when things are not working. But before we do that, we obviously work with the project manager to kind of be like, so what's the compromise? What can I take to this conversation that says, okay, we're not going to meet that, but we're going to do this and we're going to do that. So it's kind of, you're going in prepared. I think that is one of the most important things to those difficult conversations where you're about to deliver a little bit of bad news, is having something good to kind of help them along their way as well.
That's a great tip. Thank you, Ruby. Would you add anything to that, Sarah, about the separation of the PM and the AM role?
Yeah, well, just that, you know, being able to move away from the conversation and to really fully brief yourself on reasons why, if there are any problems or anything to overcome, it's just really good to be able to go to the team. I think just to go to the team and have a really good chat. You know, even sketch it out. Why has this not happened? What's the blocker? So that you're really well briefed to be able to go back. Because sometimes, you know, I think we all have it where we, you know, a one-on-one conversation doesn't quite hit the mark. You just need that little bit of backup. You need to revisit the timelines, the reasons. A lot of these projects are really complicated, and you know, just having those simple conversations about what's coming in on track and what isn't that simple. So it's just being able to have just have those conversations internally and then go back fully informed.
I'm probably going a little bit too deep into this, but I know it's a topic of conversation that comes up a lot, this separation of the PM and the AM role. So just, do you think in terms of a skill set that's required for the AM and the PM needs to be better versed in technical skills? Or do you think that it's really important for the AM to totally understand and maybe have done that role so that they equally are as proficient with the understanding of how a project works like that? What are your views on that? Bit of a weird one, but just curious what you think.
The first agency I was at was very technical, and I kind of got catapulted into it and had to learn the ropes quite quickly. And the project managers there were extremely technically advanced, and they were very, very good at their jobs. And actually, I probably didn't need to input technically, but having that knowledge and going to a dual role really helped me. So I would definitely say, if anyone is in client services or looking to get into client services, understanding the technicalities, and even not just technicalities, I think the brand process, photography, social media, I think if you can become your own expert within that area, I do think it really helps to have those conversations, and just your general understanding of knowing when things are going off on a different sort of path, and being able to have them conversations with your clients. I do think it helps.
I think you're spot on there. And I think I tuned into an interview with Martin Sorrell yesterday, and we were talking about, he was talking about the importance of keeping up to speed with what's happening. The industry in terms of marketing is changing all the time. I mean, digital technologies are available now that weren't available only a few years ago. So I think it's also great that you have that ability to maybe spot what the trends are, you know, not just for the customer's business, but client's business, but also for your industry and what's changing. So I think there's a real strong argument for separating those roles. Sarah, can I just ask you, what do you believe the difference is, if any, of an account manager role and account director role?
So I would say an account manager, you know, essentially you are solving client problems. You know, getting to the bottom of what needs to be done, and you're doing it, you're delivering it to budget on time. With an account director, I just think that you're coming in at a more strategic level. So you're understanding that the client's industry, you're ahead of the curve, hopefully, in that industry, and knowing what's coming next, being able to advise on that level. So you're not just talking about the agency world anymore, you're talking about the client's world, and then marrying the two together. And then, you know, just being able to partner with them really in their thinking and their thinking going forward too. So, you know, even looking next year, maybe even 5 years time, you're looking ahead all the time, and drawing observations from the industry.
I think it's a really good point, actually. I interviewed a lady called Kate Whitaker, who is head of corporate communications for Dual Group, which is an insurance group, and she said that it was particularly beneficial for her to have an agency that was working with her that understood her market and her industry. But how do you stay on top? Like, how do you stay on top of what's happening in your client's industry?
For me, I just keep an eye on the news. I've got some Google alerts set up, that sort of thing. LinkedIn's really helpful too. If you've got the right channels set up on LinkedIn, and following, I think a really quick way is following my own clients and their competitors on LinkedIn, seeing what they're talking about. Often, they'll refer to an article, or they'll, talk about an event. Even events, we can go to events back when we could go to events, and just keep on top of it. And that's a really, really quick way of doing it, actually. Just tuning into what the client's talking about. But obviously you want to bring something new to the table, so you want to be making sure that you're well versed in similar areas, or with their competitors, or other areas. So that would probably be the simplest way of doing it.
Great point.
An interest, I think, as well, just having a genuine interest, because these industries really are interesting. They've got a lot, that is, particularly over the last 12 months, a lot has been happening in different markets. And it is really interesting just paying attention to the changes and being able to take those observations back to the clients.
I love that you've brought that up, actually, because I think you're right. LinkedIn is a really, you could be entering the conversation with your clients online as well as offline. I think it's just another opportunity, as well as staying informed with what's going on in your client's industry. Ruby, what about you? Would you add anything to that in terms of the separation of the AM and AD role, but also operating at an AD level? Anything else?
Yeah, I would say that personally, I think that leap from senior account manager to account director is one of the biggest, and one that you should feel ready for. And I'd advise anyone that's in client services not to rush through the ranks. Go from exec to account management to senior to AD, and get an understanding at each level, because once you are an account director or client services director and managing a team, I think you need to have that empathy and understanding of all the levels to really kind of help manage your team. So firstly, I'd say don't, rush through the ranks. And then I think the other sort of areas in my personal career that attributed to that step up was firstly managing a team, that sort of day-to-day management, as well as creating their growth paths and mapping out their commercial and client and personal based objectives, having those check-ins and almost putting not your own career to one side, but acknowledging other people's as well, and being that person that's passionate and wanting them to be the best version of themselves, and highlighting areas for improvement, or kind of constantly going back to the objectives and saying, where are we at with this one? Have we met that commercial target? All of those things, I think, attributed to me becoming an account director. And then secondly, like Sarah said, I think it's having that additional layer to your client partnership. It's not just being firmly by their side, but with them at the forefront of their business, helping them drive it forward, taking in all of that insights from our industry, from their industry, and just making sure that you're kind of aligned with their not just current ambitions, but future ones as well.
Very well said. What do you both feel about thought leadership? Because I always see that on LinkedIn, for example, I think it's the platform at the moment to be on, to enter the conversations with clients, but also to share your thoughts about what's changed in the market, maybe sharing what Sarah mentioned earlier on about going to conferences and events and those insights that you pick up firsthand. How important do you think thought leadership is for account management?
In order to demonstrate, as in us writing pieces and well, I think, it's really important. It's a change from the norm. And I think that's what people look for in an agency. They're not just looking for people to do what they're telling them to do. They're looking for people to think differently and to challenge what's been done. And, obviously they call it, just disrupting and just new thinking. And that's above and beyond what a lot of agencies offer. So and I think that's what draws people attention to us as an agency.
Really well said. Thanks, Sarah. Ruby, can you give us some examples of where you think that account management has made, or you yourself has made, a difference to the bottom line of the client?
Yeah, of course. So I had a university approach us a few years ago with a brief to help drive open day attendees. And that was kind of the extent of the brief. It wasn't very deep. So we worked closely with them to kind of build that solution and seamlessly allow users to engage with the university and book open days. And the project KPIs were met and that brief was fulfilled. But as part of the account management process and being involved in the insights phase of that project, we did like a sort of a deep dive into everything, and we discovered there was a series of mundane tasks that staff were having to do manually. So we looked to overcome that as part of this project and automate those tasks, so that not only did it boost general morale, but it also empowered the team to spend more time on strategic partnerships, which had an amazing effect on the client's bottom line. And it was a great example of how account management and insights, not only did we achieve the original brief, but we overcome other problems that they were not even aware of. And these were operational or internal engagement problems. So it was kind of a massive learning curve for me, how account management and sitting there and questioning things and going down different avenues with the client to not just accept that the brief was to drive open day attendees, but to delve in a little bit further. We overcome a much bigger issue than they thought. And, it was a sort of a two-pronged approach, and they got the open day numbers up and they also improved internal efficiencies and morale. So it was a really great outcome that kind of demonstrates that through design and development, you can kind of overcome a multitude of hurdles that you probably didn't even know were there when writing the brief, I think.
That is such a super example of adding additional value to a client's business, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And actually, the client presents a problem to you, but actually, is that the problem? Is it the only problem? What's the impact of that problem? And what else can we see that perhaps they're not seeing? So do you find, a couple of questions on this particular example, because I think it's a great one. Do you find sometimes that clients are reluctant to share with you more information about their business so that you can sort of lift the lid on what's happening? And how did you do it in that instance?
So as part of all of our projects, we have an insights phase where we kind of want to go in and do a deep dive, and that is, sold in from new business as part of our journey. And it's such a crucial part. And it's usually done through interviews with personnel in the team. So you kind of understand. So you're not just capturing all this information from the marketing manager or the CTO or the CMO. You're kind of broadening it out to understand other people's views on the business problems or that solution. Everyone knew we were working towards driving open days, and we were asking people's opinions on and understanding the workflow of delivering these open days. And these mundane series of tasks were completed manually and had to be done before the open day booking could be completed. And we sort of spoke to them about these tasks and how much time it was taking up. And we kind of built a little bit of a business case to really kind of explore this further with the client, which obviously they saw the amount of time that was being put into these tasks and realized that automating them would cause, I think it was about 30% efficiencies.
Wow. So if you hadn't have spoken to other people about the problem in the organization, you may not have uncovered that insight. That's brilliant. So that's a really good tip as well, isn't it, for other people listening? The person that brings you the problem, think about how the problem is currently affecting other people, get their views on how they see the problem, and through that you get the insight. I think that's a great example. Sarah, do you have any other examples of where you've added value to the bottom line of the client's business?
I've got some examples, but I just wanted to say that, generally at Thursday, that is the way we approach every problem with the insight phase. And I just think that, as a general, without specific examples, I think we take that approach each time. So a client will come to us, very often a client will come to us and say, I need a website, or I need a new, an app, or whatever it might be. And we always, as a matter of course, will sit down with them and actually analyze what they're asking us, start again, and just find out what the driver is behind that and what it is that they're trying to achieve. So we'll look at the objectives, we'll look at the goals, and then we go all the way back to the beginning and figure out if that really is the question. Is it the website? Is it the brand? Where, so for example, somebody did come to us recently for a website. Actually, it was a problem with the brand. So we have rebranded that company now, and we're already looking at really exciting results from that. And then we will go on and do a website. It's those sorts of things. And as Ruby was saying, it's just about asking the questions. And we are able, we've got lots of examples of companies that have come back to us and have said, you have made a direct impact on my bottom line through the projects that we've done with you. Exciting stuff.
It really, really is. I'm so glad you're explaining this, because I think this is key, really, to how we can add value as as an industry, as a role. And I suppose I kind of want to dive even deeper into it, but I think you've really explained the key crux of it. And I suppose I want to ask you the same question, Sarah, about, is there ever any reluctance? You know how sometimes it's a character thing, isn't it? If your client comes to you, I just need a website, just get on with it. I've made the decision. I always use the analogy of being a doctor diagnosing problems. We kind of have to ask loads of questions to really uncover all the symptoms, but sometimes people come and they're self-diagnosed. I know what the problem is. I've chosen my medicine and I just need you to write the prescription. Do you ever find that?
It does happen, and it's usually, and again, we're always going to have some conversations anyway, whether we explain that we need to sit down and really identify the issues.
I think it's probably particularly with existing clients, isn't it, Sarah, that we find that more. I think new clients are more than happy to go through the deep dive insights, but existing clients, once they've done that big brand and big website projects, and they're like, right, I need this. And we go, right, let's delve into why you need that. And they're like, oh, no, I just need, they've been through the process. They're like, enough about me. So there are times where you have to know your clients, I think, and you have to understand when they want to go through it and not. And Sarah and I mean, we definitely experience clients pushing back and saying, this is what I need. I just need that.
That's a really good point, actually, to separate it from brand new clients who are working with you for the first time and it makes sense. And then those ongoing relationships. So that's the reality, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Sarah, were you going to say something else then?
Just often down to time restraints and budgetary restraints with clients. If they feel like there are new requirements and they need it done quickly, then yes, they often do come to us and say, right, forget asking any questions, let's just get this done. But we do still try to, as far as possible, even if it's reusing insight that we've done previously, we're reluctant really to kick off a project without any insight behind it, because the end result is always so much better when you've got full visibility of what you're doing and why you're doing it.
I suppose it's also explaining why you're digging in further.
Exactly.
Typically with our other clients, we've found in the past that going a little bit deeper into this area helps them and make it about them. So that's a really good point. Why do you think clients stay with agencies for a long time? Because I know that you've got very loyal clients, and obviously testament to Simon Harmer, who's, I think, has created a really fantastic culture where you both feel very, happy in your roles, energized, motivated. And it's a real sort of team vibe, which I think, culturally, I think the agency has got it right. But why do you think clients stay with you for so long?
I think it's the continuous stream of sort of forward-thinking ideas that are rooted in the knowledge of the client's business as well as their industry is key for client retention. I think this, married with the kind of trust that's built up over a period of time from Simon, from the developers, from, the creative. A lot of people in our agencies they're client facing. Most people are more than happy to kind of jump on a call or present. And I think that's really lovely that our clients really get to know not just Sarah and I and Simon, but also the wider team. And I think that's really nice. And I think that, married with transparency on communications as well as kind of well-delivered services, helps with all the client retention.
Great points. What about you, Sarah? Anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think we are lucky with our team. They're just such a great bunch of people. And we've got, again, we're lucky with our culture in that we've got this incredibly supportive agency. So within the studio, as Ruby said, people jump on calls, they present. We all do things together, and people, our clients do know the wider team. I just think we're supportive of each other, and we have a group meeting every morning, and we can just say, in that meeting, look, I need a bit of help over here. This is we've got a new delivery date over here. What can we do? And I just find that people just come out of the woodwork and say, right, they can roll up their sleeves and help with anything we need help with, so we get things done. So it's that accountability. Even the wider team, even the people that wouldn't necessarily, in some agencies be client facing or have any real direct accountability to a client. I think here people do feel accountable. Everybody feels accountable, and everybody feels that they've got this responsibility to deliver what we've said we'll deliver.
I think this is huge. And you two, I think you remind me of my publicist days and the team that we had there, because it truly was. It felt like a family. We had each other's back, and it was just such a lovely environment. I miss that so much. And it was a very special time because, you want to be there and you want to help each other. And I get that vibe from you every time I speak to you. Tell me about, we're obviously recording this in December 2020. We've just come out of lockdown because of the global pandemic. I would love you to just touch on maybe some of the challenges you've had from an account management perspective. Any challenges you've experienced as a result of suddenly everyone working from home and maybe having to speak to clients at home or getting stuff done? What's been happening your side?
Yeah, I think that it's brilliant when we're all in the agency together, when we're all in the studio together. We can just pull into meetings ad hoc. We can just, have discussions over the desks. We can't do that now, and that is hard because we do work together so well. We create things together, so it's I think that is a drawback, that we have to work in our silos. We a lot is done over Messenger, over Zoom. It's just not quite the same. And in a creative space, I think you get the best synergies with colleagues when you are in a room together, and there's just the fun bit as well, just the social bit. But I think we are lucky. Zoom, I know that it's not everybody's favorite thing, but it's been a lifesaver. And I think that we never had any qualms in jumping on a video call with clients before. So this was just an extension of that. And our clients have been very receptive to that. They're just very happy and so we've just kept regularly checking in with clients, even if it's just to have a chat and just say, how's it all going? Isn't this all a bit weird? They've been happy to chat, and from that sometimes they'll open up, start talking about business opportunities, things that they'd quite like to do, things they'd like to look into, and we've been able to see where we can help.
Have you found that they've been more accessible than usual because they're at home and have more time for you?
At times, yeah, depending on the client. At times, yeah, they can be more accessible. And there have been times, I just think that in an office environment, your time's a bit more segmented, and you've got a meeting all morning and then you're out of the office, whatever it might be. Whereas, you don't have that travel time. There's more downtime, possibly, depending on the client. And it does mean that, they're more likely to want to have a chat, really.
I love what you said there. You're just phoning to check on them. And then that kind of leads naturally to business conversations. So that's kind of feels very natural. What about you, Ruby? What are the challenges? How have you seen this whole situation, and how have you overcome it?
So I think one of the kind of biggest challenges for me, regardless of COVID really, is managing scope creep and maintaining a healthy partnership. I think that is probably one of the hardest aspects of our role as account directors, is kind of maintaining that relationship, giving the client what they want, as well as not overburning hours in the studio. So I think, a lot of projects start with a host of assumptions on both sides that aren't always captured in the initial brief, or in the initial, which are then not captured in the estimate. And these assumptions can be anything from, functionality they thought was meant to be included, or data automatically being pulled through. And I think COVID and doing it all over the phone is doing it over Zoom has made it more difficult, because none of us have found that magic solution yet to overcome all the scope creep. But I think doing it over Zoom has made it a little bit more difficult, because I like to have quite an open conversation at the start of a partnership, maybe over a kind of introductory lunch, or quite softly, where we kind of explain that all of these assumptions will be unearthed in the early stages, and things will be brought to the surface, and that we will collaboratively overcome these. So I think not being able to kind of book those lunches and have those soft touches makes some of the harder conversations down the line a little more trickier to navigate.
That's really interesting, actually, and I'm glad we're talking about it, because scope creep is huge. It's one of the biggest problems that we have to manage, isn't it?
Yeah.
And what you just said there was really key, I think, is sort of managing expectations from the beginning, but also sort of preparing the client for the fact that there may be assumptions that we're both making and that are going to come up throughout the project that we'll have to talk about.
And I think setting that foundation to have that transparent conversation is key. And, you know, I like to capture all of these probably in a statement of work or something like that, and use prioritizing methods, usually a Moscow methodology, where it must have, should have, could have, won't have, and understanding their priorities so that I can then go back to the team and say, right, this is a really small tweak, can we squeeze it in budget? Letting the client know as well that we've managed to squeeze that one in, just so that they're kind of aware of what is coming through and what isn't. And, you know, some of the larger assumptions, you know, is there a workaround that we can do that brings it within budget? Or if not, provide an additional quote for it. And I also think for other account managers and account directors, I think having that conversation where the client assumed it was included, we've not assumed it's included, is a tricky one. And I think having the confidence to kind of, you know, provide workarounds, or if not possible, show them all the things that have been included that weren't initially included, and be confident enough to provide a quote and explain, you know, it might be that we can do this in phase 2. And it's also, once you've built that relationship with the client, the elements of or assumptions that don't